Hey there, I'm Jay Lipman. Now, every day you interact with the creative economy, whether that's the food that you eat, the TV that you watch, or the clothes on your back, because the creative economy is made up of 145 industries valued at around $800 billion. However, the issue is that the creative economy is not necessarily what impact investors think of when they think about the ways to allocate their capital. They think about climate, gender equity, nature, as they should, but what opportunity is being missed by not investing as an impact investor in the creative economy? Now, to cover that, we are going to talk about Upstart Collab, which connects impact investors to creative entrepreneurs. To talk about that, we have Laura Callanan, the founding partner of Upstart Collab, and Stephen Satterfield, the founder of Whetstone Media and the host of Netflix's High on the Hog. Laura, Stephen, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So Laura, we're going to start with you.
Okay.
Now, most investors, when they think about impact investing, right, they are prioritizing things like climate, gender equity, nature, as they should, right? But what opportunity are they leaving on the table? What are they missing by not investing in the creative economy?
Well, 5% of US GDP is in the creative economy. So if as an investor, you're looking for the best deals to do well financially and to do good in the world across all those themes that you just described, why would you overlook 5% of the potential investable opportunities? So that's the first thing to think about. The other is we at Upstart focus on the opportunities you can find in the creative economy that align with a lot of the priorities that impact investors hold. We think about the creative economy as a way to invest for financial inclusion, for quality jobs, and for community development. We looked at more than 100 sustainable and impact funds, and we realized that those funds that had the greatest exposure to businesses in the creative industries were also the funds that were doing the best in terms of diversity. These were funds led by BIPOC and women fund managers, and they were investing in BIPOC and women entrepreneurs. We thought that was really interesting. Our hypothesis is that the creative economy rewards merit and originality, and for some businesses, the capital you need to start up and grow your company is less than if you were working in the technology space. And there's an engine of organic growth. You make the cupcakes, you sell the cupcakes, you get paid, you make more cupcakes. So it's not that venture capital hockey stick where you have to raise a lot of capital, burn through it until you build an audience, build your platform, and then you finally reach profitability. So for entrepreneurs who are often overlooked and underestimated, who may be closed out of friends and family funding just because that's not who's in their network. And so if you care about financial inclusion, if you're focused on supporting diverse entrepreneurs, the creative economy is a great place to find those excellent founders.
One of the things you're touching on is one of the things that we focus on and have done for the last decade in building ethic, which is the interconnectivity of these issues. Right? None of these things operate independently. None of them operate in a silo. And so I want you to touch on, how is it that investing in the creative economy creates a more sustainable future beyond what people might immediately assume is just within the creative realm?
Well, think about, and this gets into what Stephen works on, think about how people get their information, and a lot of it is through stories. And so if you think about what stories are being told through print, through podcasts, through film and TV, having creative entrepreneurs who are thinking beyond commercial viability, not that they are not making commercially viable content, but that's not the only thing that they're focused on when they are thinking about the stories that they want to tell. If you think about stories coming from a lot of different perspectives, storytellers who are coming from different backgrounds, race, gender, sexuality, it's important that the stories that are in our society represent the breadth and the diversity of our society. That is going to make our opportunities more sustainable, not just environmentally sustainable. There's an important way through fashion, food, you can educate the consumer about how to consume more sustainably, but makes us more sustainable just in terms of us being able to continue as a community and as a society in a civil and positive way.
So on that interconnectivity, Stephen, you are on the ground, right? You're a successful example of someone who's taken that capital in and implemented it and deployed it across, right? Whether it's TV, media, podcasts, obviously the show that you have on Netflix, as well as building out the business side, right? What are some of the instances of successes you've seen with the creative economy having positive impacts beyond simply the creative element?
Yeah, well, I think what Laura was talking about with respect to storytelling is the thing that we are the most interested in terms of impact. And the way that I like to talk about it and think about it is ultimately in terms of power, because there are, of course, different kinds of power. There's economic power, there's social capital, but the most powerful form of any kind of power that exists is narrative power. And the reason for that is because all other forms of power are reliant on an underlying story to perpetuate that power. So if we were to look at the parts of our society where there are power imbalances, whether it's based on gender, race, economics, these are things that are ultimately stories that have been inherited and perpetuated. And so it is our job to think about the ways in which stories or the narrators of stories have historically been excluded or undermined. And so if you are interested in kind of having a larger change in society from the perspective of impact, then you have to look at the stories that have been allowed to flourish and come to the surface and the ones which have not. And in terms of in practice and in business, you know, we started off in print publishing, focusing on food as the common medium for storytelling. So the reason for that is much like stories itself and this framework, we were observing food as the most universal kind of medium that exists. It's the only thing that we really all have in common as part of a unified human experience. We have to eat. What we eat, how we were trained to eat, what is exotic versus normal, this is all a part of our own story, our own, as we call it, our terroir, or where we were raised. But the fact that we all have to do this one thing and this one thing only provides a unique framework of understanding. And so what we have done is use this very unique, universal, human-centered framework around the most important and fundamental part of power in society and really combine the two. And so now we're talking about not only the power of storytelling, but the power of storytelling around food. And that has led us into some really interesting spaces, both as we have shared, powerful and compelling narrators from different backgrounds, but also the places that we go are unexpected because our raft, our vehicle, our vessel of food is universal. It takes us all over the world. It takes us through history. It takes us into the future and looking around the corner. So it's an exciting space. It's a compelling space. And I think that, as I have shared with Laura, the creator economy as it relates to food has been really fascinating, or rather media, because what we experience, and as a media entrepreneur, everyone knows that media has been challenged as a sector and as a category, but we started to observe that as storytelling grew more diverse, with creators having direct access to their own audience, that it became a proxy for traditional or historic media dollars and investment, which was kind of contained or choked within maybe 4 or 5 different entities where an advertiser or a brand could spend. Well, now that model has been totally destroyed, and it's been bifurcated into a million little pieces. And while that, on the one hand, has been destabilizing for the business of media, it's created all of these other micro opportunities. And so the work that we are now engaged in is about how do we corral all of these brilliant storytellers under a single unified brand, which we've now done for almost a year now, called Hone. And so now we represent culinary talent, and it's really an evolution of moving from storytelling in the media enterprise into a space that is a lot more emergent, which is the creator economy.
Well, that's something that I want to pick at, because you are one of the success cases in that, you know, you've achieved what so many in your space would love to achieve, right? You've got a show on Netflix. It's, you know, really reflecting a story that you want to tell. It's powerful, it's impactful, it's authentic. And now what is so powerful about it, in my opinion, is, you know, with Whetstone, you're helping other creators in the creator economy learn from what you've learned. That's to amplify their work, both from a financial perspective, but also from an impact perspective. And what's interesting in, you know, this broader conversation is the creator economy is a huge economic opportunity for investors, right? Which can be impactful through the work that you're doing with these creators. So could you tell us more about the creator economy, about how you help these creators themselves and the medium that you're helping them to amplify through, for those that might not be as familiar with it?
Sure, yeah. I think, you know, in terms of storytelling, whether or not you agree with the thesis, if you agree with what I'm saying, it would be hard to disagree with the fact that every investor was ultimately sold on a story. So, you know, our story is just about narrative power. And it is looking at this power in the marketplace and ultimately based on my experience and realizing if you have a show on TV, what is called prestige media, right? It is the kind of highest form of storytelling for a creator. Everyone wants to be on TV, in other words. But when you get there, you realize that there's not a lot of support. There's no one who tells you where to go, where the bathroom is, what to do with your career, or in other words, how to leverage your 15 minutes. So what happened in my experience is that I realized, isn't it interesting? I got signed to a big agency, but there was no one who was food literate. So in other words, there was representation for visual artists, for photographers, musicians, basketball players, even art dealers in some cases have their own representation, but no one was representing culinary talent. There was no one who kind of spoke the language of food. And as we look at the role of food and culture, we just talked about, you know, food as the only truly universal experience that we all share. It was astonishing to me that no one had sort of circled this area of opportunity. And so again, looking at the changing dynamics of media, looking at what happens if your commitment to storytelling and growing your audience works. You know, there's oftentimes not a plan for what happens if things go right. And if you end up on TV, well, then what? You know, you don't want to miss the moment. And so we have been helping entrepreneurs both put themselves in position to hit it big, but also recognizing that there are many in Hollywood or on prestige networks who would love to have audiences that are as sizable and as engaged as some of the creators that we work with. So this sort of transition of narrative power is at its infancy. So I think this is what has, you know, Laura excited. It's what has us excited, because we are at the very onset of something that is and has and will continue to spill over into other industries. So in other words, whatever the story is that you've invested in, if there is a tie-in to a consumer product or behavior, it will not be perpetuated without these creators. So can you truly be invested in another consumer category and not be invested in the creator economy? I don't actually think you can.
And just to build off of this, the reason that Upstart thinks the creator economy is really meaningful for impact investors right now is because it's so new. And as you said a minute ago, it's been validated by a lot of Sand Hill Road venture capital firms as being an investable opportunity where you're going to make outsized returns. What's missing is the perspective that an impact investor will bring to the creator economy, where they will want to ensure that there are diverse creators with diverse content and stories that they're sharing, that artists and designers and creative people like the culinary leaders that Stephen works with are part of the creator economy, and that it's not just all pranks and jokes, and this very powerful new communication tool is not misspent on distractions, but is actually used as a way to lift up diverse perspectives, information that we would be better off knowing and having access to. And so we're advocating that impact investors pay attention to the creator economy now while it's still in its infancy, so we can shape it with the values and perspectives that as impact investors we share. Otherwise, 5-10 years from now, the creator economy will be another $100 billion, and it will have moved in a particular direction, maybe absent some of the values that impact investors could bring to bear. And then we're going to have to try to go fix it, right? In the same way that now we're trying to fix climate issues. But we're at the beginning of this whole new space. What would it mean if we could embed the values that impact investors bring now, so as the creator economy grows, it naturally grows with those values inside of it?
And what's so interesting is I see this almost on a weekly basis, where when you find out the numbers behind the creator economy, people are always shocked by how commercially viable, how big the opportunity is, because it does seem initially to be something on the internet or some, in its nascency, but the numbers are there, the growth is there, but it also has the opportunity for the impact, and we see that with the efficacy with which certain creators do use the platform for that. And as impact investors, what are we looking for, right? We're looking for commercial opportunity, investment return, and impact, and the power that can be had through that storytelling, which is, I imagine, and I want you to touch on, what do you look for as Upstart, right? Whether it's specifically in the creator economy or across the various creator economy more broadly, what do you look for in an investment that helps you see, okay, well, this has enough of an economic opportunity and impact? Like, how do you balance those two things?
It's not any more magical than what other impact investors do, in whether it's in health or education or climate or another important topic that investors are already thinking about as engines to drive impact and return. Obviously for us, we work within the creative economy. That's the first filter that in terms of whether something's in scope for us. Then we have our impact thesis, which is very focused on social impact more than environmental impact. Somebody else out there, Jay, maybe it's going to be you, is going to seize upon the creative economy as a way to drive environmental impact. But we think that particularly because of the story and the diversity that can make up great creative content, that this is the part of the economy where we can lean into who is leading these companies, who is working at these companies, and how well they're treated, and what their opportunities for personal advancement and wealth building are, and what does it mean to communities to be anchored around creative places and creative businesses as part of what will help that community to be vibrant and resilient and sustainable. So we look at the creative economy and the impact thesis first and second, and then we look to be sure that this really, to your point, is an investable business. Obviously, there are a lot of things that are art projects, or that should happen in the realm of a nonprofit organization and receive philanthropic capital to persist. That's great. Impact investing will never replace that, the role that philanthropy plays to support arts and culture, and it shouldn't. But increasingly, artists, designers, and creative people are choosing to start for-profit social purpose businesses as opposed to nonprofit organizations. And these creative people are starting businesses as a way to scale and sustain the work that they want to do in the world. And they see the power of the marketplace and the power of investment as the most meaningful way, the biggest way that they can grow to scale and have the influence that they're seeking to have. So there's nothing magic about impact investing in the creative economy. It's going to look like impact investing in all other industry sectors. What's been missing is the attention and the recognition of what the creative economy can offer impact investors, and that's what Upstart's here to fix or to address. That gap or the opportunity to bring the 5% of the American economy and what's predicted to soon be 10% of the global economy in these creative industries to the attention of investors who want to do well and to do good.
I mean, it's fascinating because if you actually think about what you're talking about, it is some of, by definition, the most interesting stuff that we have in our economy to invest in. And so I think once you can bridge that gap, which I think together we're going to try to navigate, communicating to investors the opportunity, right? I think that it's going to become an increasing percentage of an allocation just because it is so engaging, exciting, and it is the future economy.
And if you think about it, it's a kind of nuts, right? Because you talk a lot about investing in nature, and I know you've got a plan for what that's going to look like and how that's going to work, but there's not really a nature industry right now. But there's a film industry, there's a food industry, there's a fashion industry, there's a video game industry, there's a visual art market that's huge and global. There are already investable opportunities in the creative industries. We just want there to be impact investable opportunities recognized in the creative industries. We also know that there are artists who've made wealth who are impact investors. There are impact investors who are art collectors and art lovers, especially younger folks, the next gen, who we know are leading the impact investing conversation in so many families already. They naturally see an intersection between culture, investing, and impact. So in my mind, it should be easy for impact investing in the creative economy to grow because the creative industries are already there. They're already generating financial return. We just need to be sure that they represent the values and priorities that impact investors already are bringing to the rest of their portfolio.
Stephen, you are an impact investment, right? You are someone that impact investors have invested in, and you've been successful. Right, you are an example that we can look at to say this is what investing in the creator economy actually looks like in success, right? What would you say to an investor that's looking at the space as to where you think there is the most opportunity, where you're most excited, and where you think that they should also be excited?
Well, I would consider the motivations of the investor, whether it was the return on capital or the return on social good that was driving the decision. If they were to consider the return on capital in the category, I would consider whether this person was themselves at any point an investor, or rather entrepreneur. And if they were an entrepreneur at some point, they probably, in order to move from the space of entrepreneur to investor, had to overcome some kind of hardship, and some kind of hardship that was probably based on a market environment that was outside of their control. And so they've had to react and think on their feet about how to evolve, transition, pivot the business in a way that accounts for whatever the market conditions were that they were reacting to. So what is the commonality or the personality or the character of an entrepreneur who is able to withstand the volatility of the marketplace? I think this is uniquely available in the creator economy or among creative entrepreneurs. We don't often, as business people, and now I'm going to put myself in that category, think about business in creative terms. But people who are creative in life, that's just their orientation towards the world. We can't help but to be creative. So when things start to go wrong, then we have to fix it. And if we have to fix it and going out of business is not an option, that sounds like an investable business to me. So I would just kind of point that out as a kind of character trait, I think, that is uniquely represented in the creator economy. If it's the social impact, that the investor is looking towards. I think that Laura has raised a really interesting and relevant point. Let's say that you want to make a change in the world as it relates to climate. What does that actually look like in practice? On some level, we will need to change policy, of course, but we really need to change consumer behavior. We really need to build awareness and advocacy and literacy around the topics that we care about. And we need to mobilize support around the topics and the ideas that we care about. Who in our society are the most effective communicators for social change of any kind, good or bad? It's the folks who are now part of this totally fractured creator economy, who own the connection with their audiences, which is very influential. That's why we call them influencers, because they move markets. Now, the problem with influencer, or the marketplace of influencers, actually is the fragmentation, the lack of cohesion, which in our space we feel is the opportunity. We're bringing everyone under one roof now, and food. But if you're an investor and you want to move the needle, at some point you will have to interact with the folks who will move your ideas into the marketplace, especially if there's a social change that is required. So I don't really see, again, how you get away from investing in the category if you have a kind of entrepreneur that you want to back, or you have a change that you want to elicit. I believe that this is the best industry to do that.
And one of the things that's the superpower of the artist, designer, or creative person who has elected to be a social entrepreneur is they are able to break through the tension that usually exists within a social purpose business of making money and doing good, right? Having their social impact. The way they break through it is they can recreate a solution that will not sacrifice the financial return, and it won't sacrifice the social impact. And this dawned on me with one of the other wonderful artists that we know through Upstart Collab. He had a furniture business. He had some investors who were not really impact investors. They said, you know, we could make more money if the furniture was being manufactured in Asia. Why don't we go and do that? And he said, why no, the reason I started this company was to give quality jobs, well-paying jobs to makers here in America. That's the purpose of why we're doing this. And they're like, but we could make more money if we... He said, okay, I'm going to redesign this furniture so we can make it in the United States, which achieves our social goals, in a less expensive way, which will allow you, investors, to achieve your financial goals. Mm-hmm. Most social entrepreneurs are just caught in that tension that you either have to make less money or you have to give up the impact. The creative entrepreneur is able to imagine and recreate, offer that third path so that there's a different solution that allows those two priorities that are often in tension to both be fully realized.
Stephen, Laura, thank you for joining us. It's been an amazing conversation. There's more for us to discuss in the future. Cheers.
Thanks.
Cheers. Thank you.